What if a single whispered conversation in the Vatican could alter the course of the Catholic Church for generations? Not a synod with fanfare, not a decree broadcast to the world, but a private meeting so discreet it barely made headlines. Sounds like the plot of a Vatican thriller, doesn't it? Yet just days ago, Pope Leo XIV sat down with one of the most divisive figures in the Church today, a cardinal whose name alone stirs passion, debate, and hope. Now, ripples are spreading across the Catholic world, and the question on everyone's lips is this: could this be the first step toward healing a wound that's divided the faithful for decades? Welcome, everyone, and today we're immersing ourselves in a story unfolding right now in Rome's story that could redefine the Church's future. Let's make this a shared journey. Drop a comment below or call out in the room. Where are you joining us from? Are you in Dublin, Lagos, Buenos Aires, or a small parish in the countryside? Let's build a global community as we explore this together. This isn't just about a meeting. It's about the traditional Latin Mass, a liturgy that's been a spiritual home for millions yet caught in a storm of restrictions. It's about a pope navigating a church at a crossroads. And above all, it's about hope that unity, not division, might shape the path ahead. Stay with me because what's unfolding could be the dawn of something extraordinary. Let's begin with the heart of the matter. The traditional Latin Mass, also called the Tridentine Mass, or the extraordinary form. This isn't just a way of worshiping, it's a living bridge to the Church's past. For over a millennium, it was the heartbeat of Catholic worship, shaping saints like Augustine and Thérèse of Lisieux, inspiring cathedrals, and carrying the faith through wars, plagues, and revolutions. Its Latin chants, its reverent silence, its focus on the Eucharist as the source and summit of faith. It's a liturgy that draws you out of the everyday and into the eternal. I've attended a Latin Mass myself in a small church in Florence, and I can still feel the hush as the priest elevated the host, the air thick with incense and awe. It's not just a ritual, it's an encounter with the sacred. But this liturgy has become a lightning rod. In 2021, Pope Francis issued Traditionis Custodes, a document that placed severe limits on its celebration. Parishes were told to stop offering it. Priests needed special permission to celebrate it. Communities were relocated to distant churches, sometimes hours away. For many, it felt like a betrayal, not because they rejected the modern Mass, but because they loved a tradition that had nourished the Church for centuries. The pain was visceral. Families rearranged their lives to attend. Priests faced suspicion or discipline. A divide grew not just over liturgy, but over trust, identity, and belonging. Enter Pope Leo XIV, elected just months ago in 2025. He's a figure of quiet resolve, a shepherd who listens before he speaks, reflects before he acts. He inherited a church stretched thin, torn between those exhausted by decades of pastoral experiments that often fell short, and those clinging to the Latin Mass as a lifeline of reverence. Every step he takes is scrutinized, every gesture loaded with meaning. And now, one meeting has set the Catholic world ablaze with questions and hope. Here's the fact that stopped me in my tracks. Pope Leo XIV held a private audience with Cardinal Arthur Roche, the man who, under Pope Francis, enforced Traditionis Custodes with an iron grip. This wasn't a casual coffee break. In the Vatican, nothing is accidental. The secrecy, the timing, the choice of Roche, it all carries weight. And within hours of this meeting, something astonishing happened. An American bishop announced a pause on planned restrictions on the Latin Mass. Coincidence? Or the first wave of a tidal shift? Let's pause for a moment to connect. What do you think this meeting could mean? If you're watching live, share your thoughts in the comments. If you're in the room, turn to someone nearby and discuss. Is this a sign of change? Or just another Vatican mystery? Hold on to your thoughts, we'll circle back to them. Let's unpack this meeting. Cardinal Roche is no ordinary figure. He's widely seen as the architect of Traditionis Custodes, a symbol of the hardline approach that left many traditional Catholics feeling like outsiders in their own church. His tenure as prefect of the Dicastery for Divine Worship made him a polarizing figure respected by some for his commitment to liturgical reform, resented by others for what they saw as an attack on their spiritual home. For Pope Leo XIV to meet with him privately in his first formal encounter since his election is a bold move. But what does it signal? The timing is critical. This meeting came after months of uncertainty about the Latin Mass's future under Leo's pontificate. Would he double down on restrictions, as some feared? Or would he chart a new course? Then, almost immediately after the meeting, Bishop Michael Martin of the Diocese of Charlotte, USA, made a stunning announcement. In an official letter to his clergy, he paused planned restrictions on the Latin Mass, delaying their implementation until October 2025. His reasons were twofold. First, the traditional community needed time to process and adapt. Second, and this is seismic, he suggested the Vatican itself might soon revise its guidance. Let that sink in. A bishop publicly acknowledging that Traditionis Custodes, once treated as untouchable, could be rewritten. That's not a local decision made in a vacuum. It's a signal that something is stirring in Rome. October isn't a random date. It aligns with whispers of new Vatican directives on the Latin Mass. Could Bishop Martin's pause be coordinated with Rome? Is this the first tangible fruit of Leo's meeting with Roche? No official Vatican statement has confirmed a policy change, but in the Church, silence often speaks louder than words. Bishops don't halt major decisions without a nod from above, and Charlotte isn't an isolated case. Reports are trickling in from dioceses in Europe, Latin America, and even Asia, where bishops are quietly reassessing their approach to the Latin Mass. The mood on the ground is shifting: less fear, more anticipation. Imagine you're a parishioner in Charlotte. For months, you've heard rumors that your Latin Mass community might be uprooted, your parish reassigned to a church an hour away. You've prayed, written letters to your bishop, maybe felt like your voice was drowned out. Then suddenly your bishop says, "We're pausing. We're waiting for Rome." What stirs in your heart? Hope? Relief? Caution? That's the pulse of this moment, and it's beating across the world. Let's make this personal. If you're a Latin Mass attendee, what's been your experience these past few years? Have you felt marginalized? Or have you found a way to thrive? Share your story in the comments or with someone nearby. If you're new to this issue, what's your first reaction to this news? Your stories are part of this unfolding narrative, and they matter. This story isn't just about liturgy, it's about the soul of the Church. The traditional Latin Mass isn't a niche issue, it's a flashpoint for deeper questions. How does the Church balance its ancient heritage with its modern mission? How does it heal divisions without silencing voices? Pope Leo XIV is walking a tightrope. On one side, there's a church weary from decades of pastoral experiments, new liturgies, new approaches, new challenges that haven't always borne fruit. On the other, a vibrant, growing community of Catholics, families, young people, converts, drawn to the Latin Mass's reverence. They're not asking for privilege. They're asking to belong. Let's explore why the Latin Mass resonates so deeply. It's not just about Latin or old vestments. It's about continuity, a tether to a faith that's endured for centuries. The Tridentine Mass, codified at the Council of Trent in the 16th century, was the Church's response to a world in turmoil. It unified Catholics across cultures, from Europe to the Americas, through a shared language and ritual. Its structure, the silent canon, the priest facing ad orientem toward the east. The focus on sacrifice points to a God who is both transcendent and intimate. For many, it's a refuge from a world that's noisy, fragmented, and fleeting. I think of a young couple I met at a Latin Mass in Chicago. Sarah and Michael, both in their 20s, weren't raised with the old liturgy. They discovered it after drifting from the church in college. It was like coming home, Sarah told me. The silence, the reverence, it felt like meeting God in a way we'd never known. Their story isn't unique. In parishes from Paris to Manila, young Catholics are flocking to the Latin Mass not out of nostalgia, but out of hunger for beauty, truth, and transcendence. Pope Leo's approach is what makes this moment so compelling. He's not a pope of grand gestures or hasty decrees. He's a listener, a discerner. His meeting with Roche wasn't a photo op or a public endorsement of past policies. It was quiet, deliberate, almost surgical. Some speculate Roche wasn't summoned for praise, but for instructions, a sign that Leo is re-evaluating Traditionis Custodes. This fits Leo's pattern. From the moment he stepped onto the balcony of St. Peter's, he's been a pope of discernment. He watches how bishops implement policies, how the faithful respond, how the Spirit moves. He's not chasing headlines, he's chasing unity. And unity doesn't come from doubling down on restrictions. It comes from dialogue, from recognizing that the Latin Mass isn't a problem to be managed, but a treasure to be shared. Let's look at the global picture. The Latin Mass isn't just an American or European phenomenon. In Nigeria, young Catholics are learning Gregorian chant. In Brazil, Latin Mass parishes are overflowing, with standing room only crowds. In Australia, seminarians are studying the old rite, drawn to its depth. In India, small but dedicated communities are forming. This isn't a fading relic, it's a living movement, growing among the young, the faithful, the seekers. To marginalize it isn't just unfair, it's a missed opportunity to harness its energy for the Church's mission. But the path forward is complex. Any change to Traditionis Custodes will spark debate. Some will argue it's a retreat from Vatican II's reforms, claiming the Latin Mass fosters division. Others will say any change doesn't go far enough, that full freedom for the old liturgy is the only path. Leadership isn't about pleasing every voice, it's about wisdom, humility, and vision. And Leo's quiet moves suggest he's got those in spades. Let's take a step back to understand this moment. The Latin Mass's story didn't begin with Traditionis Custodes. Let's rewind to 2007, when Pope Benedict XVI issued Summorum Pontificum. That document was a game-changer. It declared the Latin Mass an extraordinary form of the Roman Rite, freeing priests to celebrate it without special permission. Communities flourished. Seminaries saw renewed interest. Young people, many born long after Vatican II, discovered a liturgy that spoke to their souls. I remember visiting a parish in London where the Latin Mass was packed with university students, their faces lit with devotion. It wasn't about rejecting the modern Mass, it was about embracing a heritage that felt alive. Then came Traditionis Custodes in 2021. Its stated goal was to foster unity, but its implementation often sowed division. Bishops applied it unevenly. In some dioceses, Latin Mass communities were treated with pastoral care, allowed to continue with minor adjustments. In others, the rules were enforced harshly, parishes closed, priests reassigned, communities displaced. In one diocese in Texas, a thriving Latin Mass community was told to move to a church 2 hours away with no public transport. In another case, a priest was disciplined for offering the old rite privately for a small group. These aren't just policies, they're stories of real people, real faith, real pain. I think of Maria, a mother of 4 I met in Dallas. Her family found the Latin Mass during a crisis of faith after losing a child. "It gave us an anchor," she said, her voice breaking. "The silence let us grieve, but also hope." When Traditionis Custodes hit, their parish was moved to a remote location. They drove 2 hours each Sunday, kids in tow, because it was where they met Christ. "We felt pushed out," Maria admitted, "but we kept going. It's our home." Maria's story is one of thousands, and it's these souls Pope Leo is called to shepherd. Let's connect again. Have you or someone you know been affected by these changes? What's kept you faithful through it all? Share in the comments or with someone nearby. Your experiences are shaping this moment. Now let's return to Pope Leo and this pivotal meeting. Why meet with Roche now? One theory is that Leo is signaling a shift. By engaging directly with the architect of Traditionis Custodes, he's not endorsing the past, but examining it. Some Vatican insiders suggest Roche was called to discuss revising or softening the restrictions, perhaps preparing for a new document. Others believe Leo is testing the waters, gauging how such a change would be received. Either way, the meeting wasn't a courtesy call. It was a calculated step. The ripple effects are already visible. Bishop Martin's pause in Charlotte is just one example. Reports from Poland indicate a diocese quietly extended permissions for Latin Mass celebrations. In Argentina, a bishop met with traditional communities to hear their concerns. A rare move. These aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a pattern. The Vatican's silence isn't empty. It's pregnant with possibility. What's driving this? One factor is the faithful themselves. For years, Latin Mass communities have persevered writing letters, organizing petitions, attending Mass despite obstacles. Their resilience has caught Rome's attention. I think of a group of young Catholics in Paris who launched a website to share stories of the Latin Mass's impact. One post described a convert who found the church through the old liturgy. It was like stepping into a cathedral of time, she wrote. These voices aren't just noise. They're shaping the conversation. Another factor is the broader church. The Latin Mass isn't just a traditionalist issue, it's a pastoral one. Bishops are seeing vibrant communities, often young and growing, that don't fit the stereotype of rigid reactionaries. In a diocese in Canada, a Latin Mass parish has become a hub for youth ministry, with teens leading chant workshops. In Mexico, a traditional community runs a food bank alongside their liturgies. These aren't rebels, they're Catholics living their faith. Let's reflect. What does the Latin Mass mean to you, or to someone you know? Is it about reverence, community, or something else? Share your thoughts. We'll come back to them. Looking ahead, October 2025 is the month to watch. Will Rome issue a new document? A clarification? A partial return to Summorum Pontificum? No one knows for sure, but the signs are mounting. Secret meetings, paused restrictions, shifts in tone. The Curia is revisiting Traditionis Custodes. Bishops are preparing for change. The faithful are daring to hope. This isn't just about rules, it's about souls. It's about families like Maria's, driving hours to worship. It's about priests facing scrutiny for loving tradition. It's about young people discovering a liturgy that speaks to their hearts. The Latin Mass isn't a nostalgic fad or a rejection of Vatican II, as some claim. It's a living encounter with the sacred, a continuity with a faith that's built civilizations, and as more discover it, not as a museum piece, but as a wellspring of truth, the question isn't whether it belongs, but how the Church can embrace it without fear. Pope Leo has a rare opportunity. Early in his papacy, he can set a new tone before divisions deepen. His meeting with Roche, Bishop Martin's pause, these are signs of a leader who listens. He's engaging bishops, clergy, and the faithful, not with fanfare, but with discernment. His leadership isn't about control, but about harmony. Not about silencing voices, but about weaving them into a chorus. The road ahead is delicate. Change could heal wounds or widen them. Some will resist any softening of Traditionis Custodes, seeing it as a step backward. Others will demand full restoration of the old liturgy, impatient with half measures. True leadership isn't about pleasing everyone. It's about responding to the moment with wisdom, humility, and courage. Leo's quiet moves suggest he's up to the task. As successor of Peter, Leo is more than a policymaker, he's a shepherd. His example can set a tone of fidelity, respect, and peace. If he can model unity rooted in love, not force, he'll do more than reform a policy. He'll start healing a church. Let's pause again. What's one thing you hope Pope Leo prioritizes in this moment? Dialogue, liturgy, unity. Share in the comments or with someone nearby. Your voice is part of this story. Before we close, let's talk about the faithful you, me, the millions watching this moment. This isn't just for popes and bishops. It's for every Catholic. The lay faithful have carried the Latin Mass through years of uncertainty. Think of the families who've kept attending, the priests who've quietly taught it, the young people who've learned Latin to pray it. I met a seminarian in Rome last year, studying to be a priest. He grew up with the Novus Ordo, but discovered the Latin Mass in college. It's not about picking sides, he said. It's about worshiping God with everything we have. His generation is watching Leo, hoping for a church that doesn't pit old against new, but embraces both. Their perseverance is a silent force. I think of a group in Ireland who organized a pilgrimage to a Latin Mass shrine, praying for unity. Or a father in Kenya who teaches his children the old prayers, passing down a heritage. These acts of love, for Christ, for the Church, are shaping this moment. They're why Rome is listening. So what can we do? Here are 5 practical steps. Pray for Pope Leo, for bishops, for unity. Offer a rosary for the Church's healing. Stay informed. Follow this story through reliable sources, not rumors. Check Vatican news or trusted Catholic outlets. Be charitable. Whether you love the Latin Mass or the Novus Ordo, speak with love, not division. Build bridges in your conversations. Engage. Write to your bishop, respectfully sharing your hopes. Your voice matters. Hope. Trust that God is working, even in the silence. The Church has faced crossroads before, and grace always leads the way. We're at a threshold. The Church could step into a season of renewal, not a revolution, but a homecoming. Pope Leo XIV has a chance to craft a path where tradition and renewal coexist, where reverence isn't feared, but celebrated, and we're part of it. One final question. What's your prayer for the Church's future? Unity, healing, reverence? Share it below or with someone nearby. Your hope is a spark in this moment. Thank you for joining me on this 3-hour journey. Let's keep this conversation alive, subscribe, share, and let's reconvene as this story unfolds. May God bless you, and may the Church find peace in the heart of Christ.